Hello and welcome. It's Bill Mew here from Barcelona, and I'm joined by Dez Blanchfield from there in Sydney. And we're doing our daily highlights from Mobile World Congress 2024. And I'm just going to dive in and tell you a little bit about some of the things that I saw initially. Yesterday, there was an enormous discussion about spectrum on the mobile side. All of the different players were arguing that there needs to be some sort of reform in the allocation of spectrum, the way it is auctioned off, the amount of spectrum that is given, and also the cost to the carriers. We even had Breton, the European Commissioner, talking about the need for reform here. From my perspective, I think it would be more of a shock if they weren't demanding more spectrum, if they weren't asking for reform, because I'm not sure the system has worked well, and they're enormously hungry for reform, especially in the second area that we highlight here today, and that's AI. AI has become an issue across the entire technology sector, no more so than here in telecoms, where a lot of the presentations around use cases and value propositions are now very heavy on the sort of AI side of things. And obviously the argument here is that they need more and more spectrum in order to fuel this. Des, what have you been seeing online, and what are your thoughts on some of these key themes?
Indeed, Bill. The whole spectrum challenge has always been an issue. Where do we get radio space? And, this goes all the way back to the second generation, third generation networks. And was certainly an issue when 4G and 4G LTE came out. And even more so now that 5G is still effectively being rolled out. And it's a combination of challenges in my experience. It's in some cases, some countries are using it as a way to generate revenue. In other places, such as North America, a large portion of the spectrum was actually reserved by the military. So where 5G might normally live for most nations, America had them tied up for military use. Even if they weren't using it, it was actually just blocked out. So I think we've got this challenge between, as you said, regulatory governance, if you like, some sort of guidelines versus regulatory controls, the need for some countries to use it as a way to generate revenue, but also the balance between having a fair play for small, medium, and large carriers, because obviously if you can afford $1 billion for spectrum, then nobody else can probably compete with you. So there's going to be an ongoing challenge, and it's going to get ever more and increasingly, that's a tautology probably, but increasingly challenging as we want more and more utilization of smaller and smaller regions of radio space that are available in the form of quote-unquote spectrum. And yes, as you said, we have seen a great deal of artificial intelligence in so many ways, if you'll pardon the pun, across this. And, there's a lot of talk about AI washing. But in all fairness, I think it breaks down to two elements for me, as we were talking offline earlier, and that is that there's a big push for AI in what we might call the public cloud in the 3 to 5 major players there. There's also a big push now for where AI lives in the telco space. We've all got mobile phones that have, whether it's an Apple or a Google platform, has some form of smart agent in there that's effectively our early access to an artificial intelligence in some form. We can have a conversation, ask the time and the date and the weather, ask it for directions to a place and get it on a map, or even actually get it to send a message or, book something for us. But generative AI is a whole different game. And I think the challenge now we've got is that, there's public cloud infrastructure where a lot of these generative AI and artificial intelligence solutions have sat necessarily, because that's where people can get infrastructure at scale, cost effectively, and also where they can actually scale large and burst into. But the telcos have very, very large private clouds that they run their infrastructure on. And even though I know that I think it was NTT have just rolled out some of their extended environment across Japan with AWS for some of the public space, they still have a very, very private environment. So I'm keen to get your thoughts on that, but I think there's now a bit of a push me, pull you kind of thing as to what's in the public clouds available as a software as a service offering, such as the OpenAI solution, versus what's going to be now embedded and baked into the telco infrastructure, either in their telco clouds that the incumbents have or in some sort of intermediary space.
Well, I agree with you entirely, and I think AI is going to be very much an ecosystem play. And it's interesting that Mobile World Congress is one of the few events large enough to bring almost the entire ecosystem together. Not only have you got the fixed line and the mobile carriers here, we've also got a lot of the technology companies from Microsoft, and I was on their stand earlier. I saw Brad Smith, their president, and a number of other key dignitaries are all flocking to Barcelona for a lot of the business that is done here. We had Michael Dell, who made an appearance on one of the stages, and so a lot of the big computing players are here. All of the big cloud firms are here. So you're seeing the entire spectrum. So this is going to be an ecosystem play. And I mean, I was even on the Qualcomm stand earlier, and they've got their new ARM devices coming out soon, which will have really powerful GPU, CPU, and NPU on device in order to enable AI services. So these are going to be enabled on device in the cloud, and the telcos are going to play a major role in the connectivity required actually to keep AI running.
Indeed, and the thing that really struck me looking at today's activities is that Mobile World Congress has come a long way since it was a group of carriers catching up in a hotel room versus what is really now in many ways a combination of Davos meets G20 meets CES with a bit of a telco mobile spin. We've got people that make phones that are now manufacturing cars. We have telcos who are partnering with companies that actually make semiconductor down to the chip level. And at the other end of the spectrum, as you said, we've got software, obviously, but now we've got artificial intelligence in the form of machine intelligence, machine learning, and generative AI. So I'm going to be interested to see what happens on day 3 with regard to some of the announcements that come out, because I know there's a lot of vendors and certainly the telcos hold on to some interesting stuff to keep you there for the 3rd day, and they announce stuff at the closing day. I know you're going to be doing a series of walkarounds on a number of the big pavilions, such as Huawei. And so it'll be interesting to see what's announced on the last day, but it's been an interesting 2nd day. I think there's been some big things in the 1st and 2nd day to catch up with. I think the challenge now for everyone in this space is to kind of figure out where they sit in this ecosystem and where they're going to specialize, because more so this year than ever, I've noticed that there's such a broad spectrum, if you'll pardon the pun, of businesses offering services that it's actually going to get harder and harder to actually eke out a niche that is actually yours and specialize in it rather than just being a generalist.
Indeed, I think the whole value proposition thing is going to be part of a large ecosystem play with most of the serious solutions delivered by a spectrum of different players all partnering in order to deliver value. And we're seeing so many of them here today, so I better pack my bags and head down to the show right now and trawl the different halls, gathering stuff for us to cover and to share with you tomorrow. So Des, I'll say goodbye to you now and head off to try and meet as many people out there as possible. If you see me at the show, come and say hi. If you want to follow us online, follow our social media. If you want to see some of our news reports, go to elnion.com.